Yendo number uno, yesu number uno, yeah. Number uno, yendo number
uno. What is working in my life,
Thank you very much for joining us once again for another episode of the Angaza Show. My name is Pastor T. Mwangi. This is the place where we have real conversations, also inspirations, testimonies, and also the place of the latest in terms of gospel music. And today we want to talk about the youth and mentorship. Something that will always be discussed and it will never get old, because the mean age or the medium age of Africa is 19 years old. That means the majority of the people are young people. Secondly, many people go on social media, complaining what is happening to the youth and all that. And I remember one day a renowned televangelist by the name of TD Jakes captured and said, everyone is talking about the youth, but nobody is investing in the youth. Talk is cheap. What are you doing in your space to make sure that the youth are growing in a place whereby they're being mentored, receiving instructions and all that? We'll be having this conversation because I believe it's something that we need to talk about, especially knowing that majority of the young people in Kenya are considered as the youth, that 5 years and below. This is 44 million Kenyans in a population of 56 million. Anyway, welcome. We'll be having this conversation immediately after the music break. So welcome back and thank you. We'll be talking about the youth and mentorship, especially in our territory, Kenya. Many things happening among the young people. The consumption of drug and substance abuse is in the increase. We've seen in the news of what we are calling the teens pregnancy, especially when it comes during the exam season. We see a lot of this. That means the concept of sexual immorality is on the increase, and many other things that the youth are predisposed to. And so I want to understand, how do we mentor this generation with the many challenges that they are going through? Is there hope? And so with me in the studio is a man of God, and we want to begin this conversation looking from a biblical and also from wisdom perspective. Bwana asifiwe sana. And thank you. These are conversations that we need to have as a nation, as a church, as a government also. Maybe let's begin with the introduction, Majina, Kanisa, and all that.
Thank you so much. I want to say thanks to God, and thanks for the opportunity that the God has given us to have such a conversation that is timely, and indeed a conversation that needs to be ongoing. We always say that if we stop talking, then the generation that we have is going to perish. So whenever we talk about mentorship, and especially youth mentorship, we are preparing the future and making the future better. I want to say, start by introducing myself and say that my name is Pastor Kenneth Odongo from CFF Umoja. I'm a father and also a husband of one.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's powerful. So let's begin. What is mentorship? Very basically to definition.
Thank you so much.
Because I've had people come and say, Maze, I want you to be my mentor. And sometimes I don't know whether, maybe like to me understand a mentorship. Sikitu ile, au msemianga understand a mentorship. What is mentorship?
First of all, on a shallow basis, mentorship is simply, especially when you talk about youth mentorship, is matching young people with caring adults or mentors to provide support and guidance.
Okay.
And maybe just to extend to that, mentorship can be both formal and informal. And formal is where we say that there are structures that are basically being followed in order to mentor. Yes.
Informal is where you just live your life as Paul and you say, follow me as I follow Jesus.
Yes, so where you have our grandmothers, conversation is struck anywhere.
Yeah.
There's not any structure that is being followed.
Okay.
That's an informal mentorship.
Okay.
And we have all those going in our society at the present.
Okay.
Yes.
What's your take on the whole thing about the youth and where they are, and what's your take about the involvement of the society in terms of mentorship?
A very key thing and a very important area for men of God, and especially for adults, to actually involve in this area. I did mention by beginning that the future is the youth.
Yeah.
And one of the intent of God is to raise a generation that is powerful. And so I believe that youth mentorship is the key thing that is going to raise a generation that is impactful, a generation that is able to pass the word of God to many generations that are to come after the ones that are mentors who are currently there have gone. So I believe it's something that needs to be stressed, and it's something that needs to be taken care of. We need to invest in our youths.
Okay.
Yes.
When you talk of invest, what is this investment? You know, we've had that end of viongozi wa kesho, the future is youthful. So what do we need to do now radically, looking at some of the things that are already emerging and all that? You know, we had the Gen Z movement. It was a surprise to many Kenyans and many parents. Still, people are trying to figure out who are these guys, where have they been, and all that. What are some of the things that literally tunafaa kwanza kusema tukifanya hivi na hivi na hivi sasa tumeanza kufanya mentorship?
Powerful. When you talk about investment, investment is also not narrow, but a broad concept. You know, educationally we talk about investment being resources, but in terms of mentorship, I'll talk about time being valuable, time being one of the ingredients for mentorship. You know, value in terms of resources, in terms of learning, in terms of the Bible also being in place to guide the young ones that are actually, you know, and in terms of also putting resources, because you realize some of the areas why we are losing the youth and why we need mentorship, because there's no time, there's no word that has actually gotten to them, and again also investment in terms of their growth as a way to mentor and as a way to carry them to the future generation. Yes.
Okay. Do you think possibly there is an insufficiency of mentors? Kuna mtu alisema hata ukiingia TikTok unakuta mother ndo anapiga dance fulani na mtoi wake. So unashindwa nani anafaa kumenta mwingine. I've had a conversation on online whereby there was a certain teacher was really trending. And he was just trying to say, you know what, we try a lot in school to mold these children. But when they go back at home, it looks like those who are given the responsibility to mentor them have first of all failed. Like a generation is standing in front of a broken mirror. They can't see the image of the future, how it ought to be, because very few people are modeling the kind of, you know, the kind of young person that we ought to be.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with what you say. And one of the, first of all, to say one of the areas that I've touched on for a long time is working with young people. Why this? Because there's a gap, you know. One of the reasons why there are gaps in that is that parents have been involved so much into provision and have neglected the aspect of passing values to their kids. So indeed, it is something that needs to, you know, we need to raise more mentors. You know, such programs that you have should raise even more mentors, should awaken people's spirit in order for them to be involved in mentorship. And as we did say that mentorship, you know, can be formal or informal, you know. That time that you spend with a young man, that opportunity that you're able to provide to put a young person in a good space where he's able to equip himself or herself with skills goes a long way towards preparing a generation that is powerful. Yes.
So what happens to these mentors? Tuongelee sasa wazazi, mimi na wewe.
Yes.
Hii tunafaa kufanya. Juu nikaa tumehata pia.
Kabisa. We need to do a lot.
So some of the practical things unaweza ongelesha tu mzazi wa Kenya umwambie by the 1 to 3, because kuna mtu aliandika akasema young people don't learn by they don't listen with their ears, they listen with their eyes. So it's not what you tell them, is what you do that they tend to follow.
Sure.
What advice tunaweza ambia tu wazazi before that tuingilie ma youth?
Wonderful. I'll touch on something before I talk about give an advice. You know,
Yes.
aspects of youth mentorship. There's role modeling where we are examples. We have the aspect of teaching. We have the aspect of building relationships, and we also having the aspect of connecting with opportunities.
Okay.
But one thing that I would really like share to parents, you know, because the very source of first mentorships come from the family.
Yes.
And I believe, and as I always say, that even the church, you know, a stronger church stems from the families that we come from, you know, because most of our time is spent with the family. So one of the key things that I always tell parents is the first foundation is to connect with our Creator, who is our Maker, with God. You know, with connection with God provides you with the guidelines on what, you know, and actually reading the scripture puts you in the platform where you are able to provide the first basics of mentorships. just knowing God, and also able to be involved into programs, getting your kids into, maybe mentorship that are structured for them to be better and for them to be at a space where God wants them to be.
You spoke of role models.
Yes.
Maybe expound on that.
Role model number one is examples, people who have walked the journey and have walked successfully.
Okay.
Notwithstanding challenges, they have gone through challenges, but they have been able to overcome challenges. These are people who are very key towards modeling the younger generation. The dangers of having people who are not role model is again, they will not be able to impact the values that they speak to the younger generation.
Maybe I'll ask you as a parent, what is the age gap? How old are your children possibly?
My children are quite young.
Yes.
The elder one is 7 years old.
Okay, 7 years.
Yes.
So kwa sharing your spaces at least and as a bongam, let's have conversations and all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you spoke about the aspects of mentorship.
Yes.
Which is role modeling.
Yes, teaching, building relationships, and I've talked about connecting with opportunities.
When it comes to teaching, how does this happen? Najua tuna generation fulani najua kila kitu. Wako na Google on their hands. Yes, and some people feel like young people wanasemanga, you guys just come and tell us what to do, but you don't want to know what we know.
Yeah.
So it's like you speak to us, but you've never really engaged us in these issues.
Sure. So as you raise that question, there's something that pops up into my mind, and I ask, in order to tap into people, tapping into space of young people, you must understand. And that's why majority of the youths have never been understood, because we have never tapped into who they are. We want to mentor them. Do you want to mentor them as adults? How do you want to mentor them? Are we able to create space where we are able to gel with them, first of all? We're able to create that touch with them in order to mentor them. That is the very first key thing, because that's, I think, where we've lost touch is, have we ever understood their language? What is their language? How do they intend to be spoken to? How should we present this to them? That is key. I think that should be one key areas before we even tap into beginning to mentor them.
Yeah.
Yes.
You spoke of structured mentorship.
Yes.
How does this work?
Structured mentorship, these are probably plans. You have a protocol. Now you go through mentorship where you are saying at this level, this is what you're going to do. At this second level, this is what you're going to do. There's actually a program that is followed towards mentoring these young ones.
When we are talking of structured, what are some of the key topics and components that ought to be handled? Jusome deal na mayouth.
Yes.
Yani mtu sa ile wakamu wanataka kwanza kumentor waswa young.
Yeah.
Because we have many willing people outside there who feel like, hey, nataka kuwork na wase. Na hii generation ya wajanja.
Sure.
Wanaweza kuja chini yako lakini ni kukuenjoy tu.
Kweli.
So, what are some of the key areas unafaa kusema, by the way, these and these and these and these in your curriculum should never miss?
Sexual immorality. That is one key area that needs to be touched on. Number two, relationship with God.
Okay.
And response to the secular world.
Okay.
Very key areas that we need to actually tap into with the younger ones.
Okay. Sexual immorality, relationship with God, and how they connect to the secular world.
Yes.
Okay. These are powerful conversations because I believe we're here to offer solutions. So we're talking about youth and mentorship, something that is needed urgently in our generation. Because I believe if nothing happens urgently, we might have just a generation that is growing without nurturing and growing without fathering. Anyway, we advance this conversation immediately after the musical break. Thank you very much and welcome. We are having a conversation about youth and mentorship, especially at this time. We've said that the median age of Africa, and that reflects Kenya, is 19 years old. In Kenya alone, the people that are 35 years and below are constituted to be around 44 to 45 million in a population, according to the latest census, which was around 55, 56 million Kenyans. That tells you almost 75 to 80% of the population in Kenya is a very youthful population. Of course, they factored in the children and all that in that particular demography. And so, looking at such a generation, it means that there has to be intentional investment and also mentorship to that generation. And we're going through some of the very practical things and ways that this can be done. Now, Pasim, the former president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, one day in a national event stood and said the issues of single mothers has to be addressed because it's now becoming a crisis. And you see, when a leader of such caliber speaks about a social matter like that, it begins to project where the society is. A research was done about the Black Lives Matter movement, and they discovered the core and the root cause of the Black American boy or even man. The reason why they are so much into crime and perpetually in violence is because of broken families. Yeah. Now, it looks like home is no longer safe. How does the church come in?
How does the church come in? Very powerful. I want to say that over the past maybe 2 years, I've been dealing with a number of young people. And I think one of the things that I have learned, and one of the things that I do agree as the man of God posed the question, is that, home has never been safe for the young ones. Okay. And that has led to a lot of stuff going on. Especially youths. I've dealt with youths in Botella. I've been running with youths in Makongeni. I've been running with youths in Umoja. You realize that majority of the youths actually that have gone into spaces where this need for mentorship is as a result of broken homes. But I want to say this, that as men of God, and one of the gospel that we continue to preach is that that family needs to be stronger. Yeah. Family needs to be stronger. Family is key, even towards our churches. The moment the family is broken, the church also breaks in a particular way. And so the gospel that we are preaching to mothers and fathers back at home is that, God has to be in the equation. And then there has to be proper parameters of solving disputes in these homes. I believe that it's not wrong for a mother or a father to look for help. Looking for help doesn't mean that you're weak. And I think the African mentality, as a men have gotten into a space where they feel like, when I go and look for help, I'll appear like a weak man. Okay. We need to wrap those things. And we need to get into a space where we are open, and actually seeking guidance, not only just guidance, but proper guidance from men who have been very successful in parenting, and that the church would offer that in a big way. But again, we don't step at the church only. I've also talked about, when we talked about issues to do with femicides, we need to step even to counselors, counselors, and stretch this conversation. Remember, we are not building it as a church alone, but we need also the society at large also to participate in order for us to curb the issue or the menace on the youth and drugs, youth and immorality, youth and struggles here and there. The society as a large must partake. But as a church, we need to take a stand. What is the stand? We are in support of families. Okay. We want families to stick together. We are urging parents to come up and have mechanisms of solving their dispute, mechanisms of raising kids, and that's why we have the Word of God, practicing it and following it, so that we can have a better youth.
Unajua kuna time nilikuwa natafuta nurse wa mtoi wangu, na nikaambiwa the best nurse ni mwenye amefanya kazi kwa government hospital, because amedeal na watoto wengi na ni mwenye ni mzee. So I was told to look for an old nurse who has worked in a government hospital, because there she has dealt with all manner of cases. Where kuishi Eastlands, lazima umedeal na kesi zote.
Sure.
Right, left and center.
Sure.
Maybe wisdom to approach yako na mayouth na kuangaje.
Approach yangu ya kwanza.
Mayouth pia ni technical.
Very technical.
Na kuna vile wanasemanga kijana anaweza kuangalia hivi na ajue huyu hawezi nisaidia. Na kijana anaweza kuangalia hivi akuambia ni aje, mimi hata sijui mbona nakuambia hizi story. So
first of all, just to share maybe something. My first approach to the youth, the first is that I have approached the youth. I think I had a conversation with them, but the way I approached it was very technical, such that the youth were becoming rebellious. I remember I went there and began talking about sexual immorality head on.
Okay.
And I think it was tough.
Okay.
Actually, one of them told me, these guys are planning to beat you if you talk about this conversation more. But I remember God was so graceful at that time. When the one that planned to beat me on that particular time, when I came to share that evening because I was preparing them, he came and knelt before me, and I could only understand that that was God, you know. But also, you know, God talking to me told me, you need to approach this thing in a particular way. Understand these people.
Okay.
These people have grown into a space where immorality to them is a normal day to day.
Okay.
First of all, you need to approach it in a way that they understand you. You pick them up.
Okay.
Some of them, you realize that are in a space where they lack even what to do. And so the only thing that remains with them is to engage in that.
Yeah.
So again, as you lift people, then you need to understand the root source of these things.
Okay.
And when I began to approach the root source of these things, that is when I began to get closer to them. And some got saved, and some are still getting saved as a result of that.
Kwa kitu najaribu kusema, there is a dynamic ya kulichia vijana.
Yes.
Mentorship si ngumu.
Yes,
There is a dynamic, there is a language,
Yes.
there is an approach.
Yes.
And what I'm also hearing is you have to be patient.
Very patient and loving. Very patient and loving.
Because these guys are willing.
Yes.
But sometimes vile siuingia kininja sana.
Yes.
So nakuta we don't even have that space of interaction and even the space of engagement.
Sure.
So what is the way forward?
The way forward towards this is, I'll say, like we've talked about certain aspect of it, talking about reaching. But again, we need to understand that in itself, because we did not mention that mentorship is God's plan for growth, you know. Mentorship is God's plan for growth. And again, at the same time, also, it's a God's plans for strengthening the faith of believers. So mentorship in itself is a space where God requires us as mentors who are in that space to actually equip the ones that need to be mentored to the level that God desires them to be. So the future for this is that, you know, as men of God, we need to equip ourselves with the values, the qualities of mentorship. We need to engage into these programs. And we need to do, you know, like I always tell people, to compare notes, you know, learn, you know, ask God for wisdom, learn from mentors who are on top of us. How did you go about this? I've had to move to many pastors, you know, who are much older than me. How did you approach these young ones? How did it go? How do you get to relay this information in order to get the youth where they need? But I'm so grateful that to date that I see that majorities are welcome. The moment I begin to speak with them, all of them will come in numbers and agree to that. And they will tell you along the way, because some of the things, the challenges that I also experienced with the young ones is that, you know, Pasi, the word was so good, but I'm still have it. Encourage them. This problem, I was taking 3 cigarettes, now I'm at 2. But Pasi, I want to go until 0. You have to keep on encouraging them. You have to tell them that is a positive trend. Keep on going. And you have to support them. Again, also supporting them sometimes means that you have to create space, because as we always say, that whenever you are mentoring somebody, you are taking him from a space where he was, where are you taking him? And I think where the gap has been is that, you know, after we have mentored, we have not taken these guys to a space, because we've left vacuum and left them in that vacuum. Yes.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you need to take them from one space to another space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very key. As I was saying, that majority of the time, especially when young people engage in drugs, you have trained them exhaustively, have taken a lot of time with them. Number one is transitioning. You have to transition them to a space where the gap is basically filled. Some of the challenges when I began actually mentorship for the young one of the challenges is the space where was I to take them after mentoring them. Because some lacked jobs. And most of the time, that was the only space they would be in. So I began connecting to people who would have jobs and talk to them so that I share with them so that they can get something to do. But at the same time, I continued with the spiritual mentorship, taking them to church on every Sunday, going hand in hand with them and picking them. And so I believe that that space, as you take them out of a space where they are, whether it's immorality, you have to not to leave them in a vacuum. You equip them until they become as strong as possible to manage their own life.
Wow.
Yes.
So now they are able to grow. Are there success stories? Are there people you look at and you're like, boss, really quite gone case?
Yes, I've seen God in many instances. Some have become pastors, they're
Wow.
sharing, evangelizing. Some, and we give credit to God because that would have only been God. Some have ended up transforming their life in jobs, raising families, and you look back and you tell God, truly it was you. And that is just an encouragement. It's not an easy work, but then when the grace of God is sufficient, and you have a lot of love for people, because number one, as we say, that you've got to have love for people.
Yeah.
In order to mentor people, you've got to be listening, and you've got to have a lot of love for them in order for you to mentor them to a level that God desired them to be.
And a lot of patience.
And a lot of
which I
patience.
think many people don't have.
Sure.
They want to work with you. After 2 days, they
Yes.
expect you to be 100% change and transform
Sure.
and everything.
Actually, that reminds me of the youngsters. The first one, they told me, we don't want to go to church. Some of them would tell me, we don't want to go to church, per se. Why? Because the church will not, will not get what we need. We'll be judged. But I told them, no. It had to take a couple of months, years for some to even get to church because they were not secure in those spaces. And that left me to a space where, the way in which we present it, we need as men of God, we also need to understand these youths in order for us to get them. You realize that if you look at Europe, it's majority of the people in Europe go to church are the elder people, not the young ones.
That's right.
And my prayer for Africa and precisely Kenya where we are is to see higher number of youths in church. That has been my prayer. Not the parents, because we are creating a future. You look at certain environments, I was in Nyeri a couple of days ago. You realize that, I went to one of the Anglican church. You find it's the elders who go to church, and I began asking, what is happening, And these are saying church kuna bo, and I told them
They don't understand us
They don't
anymore.
understand what is happening there,
Wow.
And so that created a gap, and I began talking to parents. We need to create, forums, where these guys can come to church. If there's no youth service, you need to create a youth service. I was talking to one of the mothers there. And actually when I left, one of them was telling me, sure, they need a youth service.
What's your final advice for someone that is watching us today in terms of mentorship?
My final advice is that, one is that for mentors, parents included, caregivers, that we need to be on the forefront. Because without this, it will be very impossible to have a generation. We need to see a future. We need to see our kids. If we don't properly mentor these kids, what is the future? The future will not be there. The word says that the teaching of the wise is the fountain of life, and it tames us from the snare of death. If we don't step in and give the values to this young one, then the future in itself is very bleak for us. So we need to step up. In whatever position you are, remember this is a collective thing, men of God in space, fathers in space, counselors in space, and those that have been mentored also be in the space in order for us to curb the issues that are a menace to the youth.
Wow,
to the youth.
wow. Well, that's amazing. I believe the future is young, as that has been captured very well. We want to say thank you very much. Thank you for the conversation. I believe it's something we cannot outgrow because every day we are learning something about the young people. And above all, every day we need new strategies and dynamics to approach them because everything is changing, even the generation. And our methodology also ought to change in how we approach some of these issues. Anyway, thank you for your time. See you immediately at the Crossroad segment. Back, and thank you very much for joining us once again. This is the Crossroad segment. I'll just share a very short story. One day I was in the city of Eldoret, and I happened to be there very early in the morning. And when I was going there at around 5:30 to 6:30, I saw the athletes running. And as they were running, behind them were these young students in their uniforms and with their bags running with them. And I remember I looked at that photo as I was driving in the city, and so many young people were running with these athletes. The athletes were doing their daily routine, but the young people were running as they were running to class. One thing Eldoret is known for is the number of medals and number of athletes that we've produced known for one who even broke the world record, Kipchoge. And this for me, as I looked at that picture, I looked at the young boy and I looked at the athlete and I realized the young boy was actually seeing his future. Because there was hope. Generals and great people have done it in Eldoret. And I realized there are many young people running, but there is no one to follow because no one has modeled the pattern of how they ought to run. And that's why when you look at the culture of athletics in Eldoret, it's perpetually going because the young people are inspired by those who've gone ahead of them and they've broken the ceiling and made the record. I believe as we run our own individual races of life, you may not realize how many young people are running with you. Possibly you don't see them, but there are people watching how you conduct yourself. And I believe, as St. Francis of Assisi once said, preach the gospel and if necessary, open the Bible. This is a challenge to all of us who are in the race of life. May God bless you and have a blessed day. My name is Pastor Tim Mwangi, and thank you to the camera crew and everybody behind the production team. Till next Saturday, see you then. God bless you.